Hi, my name is Kasaya, and this is my classroom assessment plan. My improvement goals for my classroom include the following. Student-centered feedback on one specific goal. I need to be more mindful as to what I am asking my students for and how I am assessing them. I find myself caught up trying to give too much feedback on too many different goals. I need to focus my attention and theirs on successfully mastering one goal at a time. In our first couple of weeks in class, we read about feedback. What stood out to me was the quote, "Too much feedback only at the task level may encourage students to focus on the immediate goal and not the strategies to attain the goal. I need to give feedback quickly and focused on one goal. Using and focusing on one objective at a time. My class involves a lot of reading and learning new reading concepts, strategies, and techniques. Though this class is jam-packed with reading tools, I need to allow the students to feel comfortable with one at a time. I need to choose only one objective for the lesson that can then be assessed through formative assessment or higher order thinking questions. I need to work on writing and assessing my students with higher order thinking questions. I would rather have my students assessed through hot questions in order to continually focus on student growth and progress. This will help me alter lesson plans, reteach when needed, and follow student progress and learning. Formative Assessment Overview. Summary of Brookhart's Chapter 1 through 3. Higher order thinking is when a student engages with what they know and transforms it. Every student needs to be asked higher order thinking questions regardless of their levels in school. When they are exposed to these questions, they are being challenged to think more directly related to the overall goal. Performance assessments are used to look at student growth and progress. Hot questions should be used very frequently and throughout the lessons, not just the end. Higher order thinking can be assessed all throughout the lesson or unit using exit tickets, quizzes, activities, and so forth. We need to be using these questions to assess what the student is learning and improvement. As we look into creating hot questions, we need to work from the student's perspective. Is the question too difficult to understand? What is the question asking me to do? We need to keep the instruction and assessment aligned in order for the questions to be useful. Performance assessments and formative assessments are what we should be relying on to track our students' learning and progress. By giving students room to use open-ended questions and demonstrate their knowledge based on what they learned is more beneficial than testing students if something is right or wrong. Transformative assessment is the gathering of data in which we can analyze to understand student learning, student strengths and weaknesses, and feedback on what needs to be readdressed, retaught, or built upon in the lessons to come. These assessments allow me to collect data over the course of a lesson and unit, giving me information for each student before, during, and after the unit, student objective achievement, or what I need to teach again for all of my students to meet their goal and successfully achieve their learning objective. Additionally, this allows me to adjust my lesson immediately or in the next lesson depending on the formative assessment being used. Brain-friendly. Teachers need to be aware of how students' brains work and what is affecting them. The mood of the child affects the outcome of the class and what the student learns. When teaching students, somatic memory should never be used because the student won't remember what they learned. This is the system of cramming. Furthermore, episodic memory is when the student used the location to accompany a memory. If a person is out of place or something has changed in the room, it will disrupt their memory. Students need to use reflexive memory that involves emotion, and the emotional connection they have to the content makes the retrieval easier from when they learn the information. There is also procedural memory, that is the use of the body while learning helps make the memory stronger. We need to begin with the end in mind. Also, when we are talking about objectives to our students, we need to communicate them both verbally and in writing for them to understand. Our minds are wired in very complex ways, so when we teach our students, we need to help them understand the material, and we need to understand how they are going to learn it, process it, and grow from it when we are teaching them. Dodge's formative assessments. Dodge's book has created resources for teachers so that we can assess our students through from different activities. In my reading class, I focus on quick writes for tickets out. These allow me to get quick feedback, adjust my lessons, and reteach the objective. However, I always struggle with coming up with more than just ticket outs and quick writes. Dodge defines formative assessments as a planned process of giving assessments to collect evidence of student status, which is then used by teachers to adjust their instructional procedures or for students to adjust their learning tactics. He also states that by varying the type of assessment given is giving a more accurate picture of what the students know and understand because they are having to think differently from the same objective. After I have decided on my objectives, and a strategy I need to use is creating hot assessment questions based on those objectives. I get caught up getting the assessment done closer to the end that I lose sight of which objectives I wanted the students to actually be successful in at the end. If I can create the assessments prior to even teaching the unit, this will help with keeping the lesson and objectives organized and pinpointed. There are fantastic formative assessments that help me understand student learning and growth. The tool I would like to use is a variety of different formative assessments besides the exit ticket that I consistently use. Furthermore, by using these formative assessments throughout the lesson, I am focusing on what students need to work on and what they accomplished, so a final end of the unit test is not necessary, which also takes away a lot of stress on the student. Co-creating with students is a challenging concept to me, but I think co-creating a rubric for their final goal or outcome would be more beneficial to them and myself. When we start looking at what a rubric consists of, the students need to understand the goals they want to obtain. So by doing this, we are breaking down objectives in a way that is explaining to the students what is expected of them and how they can be accomplished. Furthermore, as the students are helping create the rubrics, they are more likely to hold themselves accountable because they created it themselves. Another way I want to build my new classroom is to tier activities. Of course, all teachers are very busy during the school year, but tiering activities are based on student needs, which is why I am a teacher. I have a range of readers from very low to very high, so a one-size-fits-all reading program is not ideal. I want to take the curriculum the school provided me and create different levels of activities. An example of tiered activities follows on the next slide. Before we look at my sample assessments, this is my classroom structures. I want to be creating unit goals. By having a unit or lesson goals and objectives, the students understand what is expected of them. They are aware of what they should be focusing on, and they will understand what I am looking for. By co-creating rubrics, this gives the students the opportunity to look at learning goals and expectations. They get to think about what I will be looking at and assessing, which helps create their understanding. Also, both myself and the students are on the same page. Students can then work towards self-assessment and grading themselves. Students and classroom expectations. At the beginning of the year, I want all of my students involved. This includes building expectations for behavior, during discussions, during presentations, independent learning, and group work. Though some students struggle with keeping themselves accountable in one of these categories, by them building their own classroom expectations and norms, they are able to see and understand what is expected of them. This will also enhance the classroom climate and withhold student accountability. For the application portion of my sample assessments, I have chosen 3 specific application portions. When I look at specific concepts in reading, it is easy to try to explain more than one idea. I want to co-create the daily objective with the students. For example, at the end of the lesson, I will be able to explain what theme is. This falls under the understanding of Bloom's taxonomy. Next, hot open-ended questions in reading. One example follows. List 3 themes that are present in American-born Chinese. Choose one from your list that resonates your heart and mind and provide compelling reasons as to why this theme is important to the story and to you. Use evidence when possible. This would fall into the analyzing category of Bloom's taxonomy. For the tiered activities, it would go something along these lines. Tiered activities are something I really need to work on before implementing them in my classroom. Along with the reading concept I have been using so far, one example of tiering I would use would be Students will work on reading a part from American-born Chinese and identify a theme of the reading. They will then work with partners to discuss their theme identification and bounce ideas off as to why this theme is important. During this time, the students will be using a graphic organizer for their thoughts. For advanced learners, the students will explain why the theme is important to our society and our world. This would be used as a performance task, and it would also be placed in the creating category of Bloom's taxonomy. This has been a quick overview of my MCAPA project. Thank you for viewing.